Puerto Rico, officially the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, is a Caribbean island and unincorporated territory of the United States of America, with a population larger than 20 states. It's located in the northeast Caribbean Sea, approximately 1,000 miles southeast of Miami, Florida. Since 1917, Puerto Ricans have been U.S. citizens, and the 3.2 million residents there can move freely between the island and the mainland United States. However, as residents of an unincorporated territory, American citizens in Puerto Rico are disenfranchised at the national level and do not have voting representation in Congress, cannot vote for president, and generally do not pay federal income taxes. As such, Puerto Ricans have often found themselves left out of receiving robust federal support in times of natural disaster, like during Hurricane Maria, and are also left out of economic development plans and receive fewer benefits from social safety net programs like SNAP and Medicaid. In recent years, there's been a heated debate and several referendums on Puerto Rican statehood in the territory. The most recent referendum took place in November 2020, with 53% of votes cast being in support of Puerto Rico being admitted immediately into the Union as a state, and an additional 47% of votes being in support of independence. Puerto Ricans are clearly unhappy with the status quo. Making Puerto Rico a state would have massive implications for the political landscape of the United States, introducing two senators representing a population that supports Democrats over Republicans at a 2-to-1 ratio, reshaping the 435 seats of the House of Representatives, and changing the Electoral College map for the first time since 1959. In this video, we'll take a look at some of the pros and cons of Puerto Rican statehood, a complicated question with dramatic implications for the future of the U.S. and Puerto Rican politics. Puerto Rican statehood would be good for democratic participation. Puerto Rico would gain the ability to vote in presidential elections, as well as in elections for senators and representatives. Full participation in the democratic process will grant Puerto Rico a higher degree of self-determination in its political and economic future. Statehood would eliminate some legal inequalities faced by Puerto Ricans. Puerto Rico is not currently eligible for the food stamp program that exists to help victims of natural disasters, and has had issues with access to family tax credits, Medicaid enrollment, Medicare access, and several other federal programs that do not apply because of its current classification as a commonwealth. Puerto Rican statehood would improve access to global trade. As it stands now, the only way that Puerto Rico can enter a global trade agreement is through approval from the Financial Oversight Board in Congress, on which Puerto Rico has no representation. If they were granted statehood, the island could immediately use the various trade agreements, alliances, treaties, and other options that are available to states to stimulate their economy. Puerto Rican statehood is popular. In 2017, 97% of voters in the Commonwealth voted in favor of changing the status quo, with the majority voting to join the United States. The latest bill introduced by the Puerto Rican delegation to admit Puerto Rico as the 51st state received 53 co-sponsors in Congress. Puerto Rican statehood would mean citizens would have to start paying federal taxes. While Puerto Ricans pay a high sales tax rate of about 10.5%, the income tax is currently only about 4%. There are no taxes on dividends or capital gains, and shifting to statehood would likely change the tax code and make Puerto Ricans pay additional taxes, which is generally unpopular. Statehood would emphasize English as the official language. Puerto Rico currently has two official co-equal languages, being English and Spanish. We've seen in the past with states like New Mexico and Louisiana, where English wasn't the sole language spoken, see a rapid cultural shift after statehood that replaced Spanish or French with English. We can expect the same in Puerto Rico. Statehood would make the U.S. government responsible for the island's debt. Puerto Rico currently holds about $74 billion in defaulted debt and $49 billion in unfunded pension liabilities, leaving its credit status questionable. The federal government would need to resolve these issues if Puerto Rican statehood were to be successful. Statehood would change the national crime and poverty statistics because Puerto Rico would immediately have the highest levels of poverty and crime in the country if it were to become the 51st state. This could shift financial resources away from other states and would likely need additional investment from taxpayers to satisfactorily address these issues. Ultimately, life on the island is nuanced. Statehood could improve economic conditions on the island while significantly changing the political, economic, and cultural systems already in place both on the island and in the United States as a whole. Puerto Rican statehood will continue to be a hotly debated topic in the years to come. Do you think Puerto Rico should become a state? Share your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you've enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe.